And today we will discuss the second Trump area, how it will be reflect both the regional and the global scale. I don't want to take too much time because we have today 5 speakers. First of all, I will give the floor to Philip. Philip, welcome to our panel and thanks for the accepting our invitation. I know that you are hard of the right now everything in the Washington. I will ask a very broad questions because I want to ask as much as your comment in a broad sense as much possible. First, can you tell us that how the Americans basically reacted the last election and the Trump's aggression in the last weeks, and what do you expect in the domestic politics, especially changing the bureaucratic level positions and how it reflects domestic politics, mainly economy, and of course the migration, which is much more controversial in the world as well. And of course, what do you expect for the foreign policy debates? Trump's also surprised us when he mentioned about the Panama, Greenland, and some other interesting topics. He pinched us, and everyone is very busy about this. So the floor is yours. Philip, your voice is off.
Yeah, there we are. I went to mute. Thank you, Şuay, for the invitation and to be here with you and your colleagues. It's a very interesting subject matter to discuss with people who represent different parts of the world. And perhaps there are some who have an American perspective, but I will give you mine. President Trump's re-election is a major change in American policy, both domestically and internationally. Much of the examination of Trump, of course, focuses on Trump, the person. And that's the way the media and many observers treat politics. They personalize it very much. But of course, Trump represents a broader movement, a perspective that is deep in American society, deep in American politics. And although much of the discussion is about Trump in a and as I say, this personal analysis, it is important to keep an eye on when we look at the situation in the United States at the broad trends in politics, because at the end of the day, an American president represents broad trends of political perspective, values, and other issues that come together in American democracy. And democracy is about having to say disagreements with people in the United States as in any other country in the world. And the fact that Trump is a controversial figure needs to be seen as well in the context of American history. Many American presidents, the greatest American presidents, often were very controversial figures in their time, as was the case with Franklin Roosevelt, for example. It's the case with Abraham Lincoln, the case with Ronald Reagan in more recent terms. These presidents are very controversial in domestic American politics. History has a tendency to paint them up a little bit and to remove the controversy of the day. The fact that there's much controversy around Trump, again, has, as I said at the beginning, much to do with his personality. But I think the Trump phenomenon in the United States can only be understood in part as a reaction to what has happened in domestic US politics, and it's been a global phenomenon as well, which is a move to the left on significant issues that affect countries in their national context. And that would be, high on that list would be immigration. High on that list would be a phenomenon across America, Europe, Latin America, probably everywhere, about reinventing social justice from a left point of view. So Trump has to be seen, particularly in the United States, as a reaction to that. The radical approach of 4 years of Biden and a little bit previous years before to immigration policy. What is it to be in the United States? Who can come here under what circumstances? It's also a sense deep in American society that the federal government that leads the country is on the wrong track. And when you see the controversy in the United States between Trump and the federal bureaucracy, for example, this is a discussion in the constitutional context of the United States that the president is in charge of the federal bureaucracy, even though it's very large in the United States. We're talking about the military, we're talking about federal workers across the country. The constitutional order in the United States is that these people work directly for the president. And over decades now, a sense has developed that the federal bureaucracy is an entity in a state, so to speak, unto itself and not responsible to the president. So there you see again a controversy: who runs the federal bureaucracy? And then the foreign policy dimension, there is a wide belief across many segments, right and left, in the United States, that American foreign policy should be, as Trump sees it, much more transactional. Transactional is the key word here, not isolationism. Transactional means when the Americans deal with the Europeans, there is a sense from the American perspective on national security policy, for example, that the Americans carry the burden, they carry the cost, they carry the sacrifice, they carry all the hard work. The Ukraine war is an example of that. The Americans seem to be the first country in the alliance against the Russians, significantly in terms of resources and military commitment, et cetera. And the American point of view, the Trump point of view would be, where are the Germans? Where are the French? Where are these grand old powers in Europe? And why are they not carrying much more of the burden? Out of that, you get the controversy over how much defense spending does Germany have? How much defense spending do many of the other NATO members have in comparison to the United States? So the point here is transactional. Trump says, you're not doing your fair share, our European friends. And that resonates widely with the Americans across many political perspectives in our domestic politics. Similarly, in terms of Latin America, the relationship, if you follow the Western Hemisphere over the past years, has been fairly intense with left-oriented governments in Mexico, in Colombia, in Brazil, telling the Americans that they have a right to migrate to the United States. This is a very controversial idea that has gained acceleration intensely in the past 4 years of the Biden administration. Again, as I said at the beginning, to understand Trump, you have to understand him as a reaction to what has also been happening long-term and accelerated in the Biden years. Americans reject the idea overwhelmingly that the country is open to whoever wants to come in. We do believe that there is a border. That's why Trump has such a strong support for quote unquote mass deportations. You saw over the weekend, yesterday, in fact, if you were following the Western Hemisphere, a controversy with the Colombians. President Petro of Colombia rejected deportation flights to land in Colombia. There was an intense reaction from the White House and President Trump to say that's unacceptable. You have, Colombia, an obligation to take back your citizens who are illegally in the United States. He immediately announced that the Americans would suspend visa services in Colombia. The Americans would impose 25% tariffs on Colombian goods unless the Colombians responded. That was a signal to other countries in the Western Hemisphere and beyond. It was a signal to Mexico, a signal to Central America, Brazil, these countries which have large populations in the United States that are illegally there. They have no permission to be there or have very weak permission to be there. This has created controversy and problems in American communities across the country. Again, back to domestic policy, Şuay, maybe a point that you wanted me to talk about, domestic policy intersecting with foreign policy. Americans in the major cities, Chicago, Atlanta, Los Angeles, New York, ask, why are we sheltering literally hundreds of thousands of migrants who came to our country outside a legal process, which is in fact a very generous legal process, but these people arrived without language skills, without job support, et cetera, and have to be maintained. They're there now without the capacity themselves to be integrated into the society. This is very controversial for any country. The United States historically accepts over 1 million immigrants yearly on the legal basis. 1 million a year. It dwarfs any other country in terms of size and scale. And these are people from all over the world. But then suddenly the Biden administration accelerated these numbers radically. They went from 1 million a year to more, something like 10, 12, we don't even know the exact number, 10, 12, 14 million people who arrived within 4 years without, the critics of Biden said he was outside the law, creating these false mechanisms to bring these migrants to the country, radicalizing the situation in our communities, stressing schools, hospitals, services, and everything else. That's why you come back to the politics. That is why Trump carried the 7 so-called battleground states in the United States, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Arizona, and Nevada. Trump carried them. And this was a significant victory in the American political divide. Again, back to my original point, and I will wrap up and we can, talk more about what I've said or have questions or disagreements. I welcome that. You come back to this idea that Trump is a reaction to what has been imposed on the United States in terms of what the federal government does at home, what the foreign policy commitments are abroad, and very significantly, what is the function of the U.S. border and who can come to the country from abroad and stay here legally. So again, final word, American presidents historically are controversial. Democracy is about disagreements and resolving that. Disagreements are part of the process. To be sure, Trump has a controversial personality. We get into discussions like Panama and Greenland. This is Trump being Trump in the sense of putting things out there. There's a discussion, there's a point of view in the United States that says that you have to really pay attention to what Trump does and pay less attention to what Trump says. And we can come back to Greenland and Panama, but I think final word here is Trump is a reaction to some of the radical left policies in the United States that have happened over the past 4 years.
Thank you, Philip. Actually, basically, you gave a very broad insights that how the Americans vote Trump again in the second election, and I think it's more important part is the historical American presidents are the controversial figures. I totally agree with you. Now, I will give floor to Valeria. Valeria, Philip already mentioned that we will see a different debates during the Trump's presidency, and I think the share burden and the EU relations with Trump will be interesting. But of course, I would like to take your comments mainly both European Union relations in case of the NATO, but also I definitely want to hear your comments regarding the Melanie's relations with the Trump and the Elon Musk role, possibility, and the discussions over the Italy.
Okay, thank you so much, Şuay. I would like to thank you, the Diplomacy Foundation, for the invitation and the distinguished guest. Actually, I really appreciate what Philip said before, that Trump is a sort of reaction of what happened before in the past years. And definitely, when we look at the European Union, also the rise of the nationalists and the right and the most conservative groups is a sort of reaction of what the European Union has done so far. I mean, definitely there is a decision-making which is led by, I would say, extreme liberal democratic stances, that they created a sort of distancing between the popular base of the European Union. And still, this is a bit of criticism from my side, despite the results of the European elections. If we look from the national perspective, the core of the decision-making process is still, in the end, of the same people as it was 5 years before. So what I want to say is that if we look throughout the perspective of Brussels and the European Union as a bloc, of course, there is a huge concern about Trump. about Trump because he clearly stated that he will impose tariff on European trade between, Europe and America, because he will force European countries to invest no longer 2% of national GDP, but I think 5% of national GDP in the NATO multilateral framework. And Europe nowadays is still in a sort of critical situation because there is still a direct threat at the European border. Due to the war between Russia and Ukraine. And Europe has this deficit, I would like to say, a sort of genetic deficit, a genetic gap that European Union has not been able to develop a real union in sense of defense and security. So mainly the defense of security of European Union has been traditionally delegated to NATO. For several reasons, because some of the European countries have different approaches to defense and security, and also because of the national budget are different. Therefore, nowadays there is a sort of concern, but as well a sort of waiting and see what will really happen, if there is a sort of congruency between what Trump says and what he will really do. There is an expectation, and I refer again to what Philip says, that Trump will adopt a more transactional approach towards Europe. And in this framework, definitely the relations between Giorgia Meloni will be one of the, I will say, the golden relation. One of the main interlocutor that he will have, proven by the fact that Giorgia Meloni has been was the only European leader who was personally invited to join the swan ceremony last week. Why this? Because Giorgia Meloni she's representing basically the right stances. She comes from a let's say far right political tradition. She has been outspoken, and if we look at from a systemic point of view, the structure of the European Union, Giorgia Meloni has been a sort of kingmaker, also in pushing for appointing the Italian commissioner, despite many disagreements within the European bloc. And moreover, Giorgia Meloni is representing nowadays the only European country who does not have a criticism within its own territory. If we look at France, if we look at Germany, and if we look at Belgium, for example, there is huge tension and many crises going on. And definitely what we will expect Giorgia Meloni to be one of the main interlocutors. But why? Definitely in the past, already during the first mandate of Donald Trump, the connection between Meloni, who wasn't in power in the time, and Donald Trump was very good. Meloni visited several times Donald Trump. Then definitely along the Biden administration, since Italy and US have been traditionally very connected, Giorgia Meloni had to compromise a lot, also within the European framework. But nowadays, it seems that at least from the Italian point of view, there is a sort of satisfaction, due also to the fact that there is a personal, a cordial relation between Meloni and Elon Musk. This cordial relation is proven by the fact that Musk has been invited to Giorgia Meloni political meeting more than one time in Italy, to the fact that between their personal sympathy, there are also margin for cooperation in business. Indeed, it seems that recently Italy opened up the file of making agreement with the Starlink satellite system owned by Elon Musk, and recently, a couple of days ago, Elon Musk's brother went directly to Rome, and there is a sort of mystery on what happened, but definitely there are some talks going on. When it comes to Elon Musk as well, this is a critical point at the eyes of European Union, because Elon Musk has been criticizing a lot some government and some political figure I refer, for example, to the German Chancellor the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, and also the German Federal President. I refer as well to the Prime Minister of UK and to Macron's France, for example. But why? Because definitely the main accusation or the main criticism is, again, the ideological base of those governments. Again, I go back to what Philip said, the extreme interpretation of the leftist group, the sort of extreme interpretation of the Liberal Democrats, the so-called political correctness, as we say in Italy. And this has created a sort of rumor in Italy, in Europe. And as well, there was a sort of reaction by saying that Elon Musk is trying to manipulate, he's trying to interfere too much into the European politics. So nowadays, we are definitely at this waiting and see mood. There is huge concern. But I do think that also the election of Donald Trump represents a sort of wake-up call for European Union from different perspectives. First of all, European Union is not united. Despite the name Union, is not united. As we say, we are experiencing different stances and different political approach coming from different countries. So maybe the Donald Trump effect will be beneficial in order to create a more solid European Union based on common stance. And as well, in terms of ability of develop a union, just not a political union or economic union as it is, but also a union in terms of defense and security. So nowadays, there is this turmoil, I will say, going on. And definitely, we will wait also what Donald Trump will do in concrete terms, basically. Thank you.
Thank you, Valeria. I noted some the words you use, the wake-up call. I really like it, and I think still the Europe, except some countries, Italy and Hungary, and some also few countries, Europe is still in the wait-and-see policy. If you ask me as well, I totally agree with you. Now, I will give floor to Zoltan. Zoltan, as you know, that the Hungary is also like Italy. The Prime Minister Orban has a special relations with Trump. I think I was in Budapest while the American election was held, so I saw that how the Orban government are so happy that he won the election. I just want to ask that, how do you see the future of the personal relations between the Orban and Trump will affect the Hungarian-American relations and the regional aspects? And one more important thing, that since the Russian-Ukrainian war broke out, Hungary has a very clear stance that to stop the war as soon as possible. And I think it can give a new cooperation field for both countries. How do you see both of these and in general sense?
So first of all, good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for the invitation. İşte Macaristan'a herkese selam. But I will continue in English. So thank you for the really interesting questions. And I think, yes, Prime Minister Viktor Orban was the first, from the American point of view, foreign politicians who decided to support Trump already in 2016 during his speech at Tusványos in Romania. It's a really important political event for Hungarians in Hungary and in Romania and so on. I don't want to go into details, but at least say that at the international level and also for the Hungarian media, he started to hear his voice, to make his voice heard in order to favor Trump. And he continued during the first Trump presidency and more importantly, after that as well. Because of different reasons, of course, during the Biden administration, the Orban government had to face criticism from the American foreign policy. The government had many, let's say, tensions with the American ambassador appointed to Budapest and so on. I don't want to go into the details, but let's say the Hungarian foreign policy and personally, Viktor Orban during the last years invested a lot in order to strengthen its relation with the United States, especially with Trump and its entourage, which means that Hungary, for example, organized CPAC event here in Budapest. Many experts and leaders from different Hungarian think tanks went to the US, joined to different organizations, different events, and they, until now, let's say, managed to establish really good and close relation with different think tanks, like, for example, Heritage Foundation, who are usually or tend to be close to Donald Trump. So that's why, as you also pointed out, there was and still there is a hope, and there was a huge celebration in Budapest due to the victory of Donald Trump, and there was no other option from this respect for the Prime Minister of Hungary. And right now, the big question, what Hungary can achieve, having these so close and, let's say, friendly personal ties. Probably Viktor Orban has the best relations among different foreign politicians with Donald Trump. Just to mention, Donald Trump's several times mentioned during the presidential campaign, Viktor Orban and Hungary, of course, in a very friendly context. So we have the Hungarian government has a really good background to start with. And probably these good personal relations will be used for transactional issues. Of course, it's really difficult to predict what the Donald Trump presidency will do. We have many issues on the table, and several issues can really harm Hungary. Probably the most important topic are the customs union, the customs questions concerning the European Union, because it will probably affect Hungary. Other question is the Hungarian special relations with China's investment in Hungary during the last years. Chinese companies, especially focusing on batteries and electric car production, invested in Hungary in many cities. And this kind of investment will achieve the production phase in the upcoming years, so in the near future. So everyone is really interested to see in Budapest what will be the American reaction to the Chinese geopolitical and, of course, economic competition. And, of course, it can be negative repercussions to Hungary. Probably the Orban government, based on the close and friendly ties, will try to somehow handle this kind of threat. On the other hand, the NATO and also military spending issues already envisaged by Trump will also or can also hamper Hungarian economics. Viktor Orban told in the Hungarian media that if the military spending would be 5 percentage points of the GDP, it will be a really huge burden for the country. So probably, even if Hungary during the previous years invested a lot in the military, we have already reached the 2 percentage points of the GDP military spending. So let's say we have done already the homework penned by Donald Trump years ago. The upcoming new works will be even more demanding. But let's say the Hungarian government is still positive concerning the future, and probably they will do everything in order to tackle this kind of huge requests from the American side. And it was also told that Viktor Orban is planning to meet with Donald Trump. It's a huge asset that they managed to meet during the last year several times. And they also, Donald Trump hosted Viktor Orban at his private residency at Mar-a-Lago, which let's say, gives some optimism for the Hungarian side. Concerning the war in Ukraine, which is a really crucial issue here in Hungary and also Central Europe, the Hungarian government was always advocating the peace. And also Viktor Orbán performed the so-called peace mission at the beginning of the EU presidency last July, when he visited Kiev, and after Moscow, he also went to Beijing, after that to Azerbaijan, and finally to the United States, to the Washington NATO meeting, and also he had a private meeting with Donald Trump. So Viktor Orbán is one of, if not the only one politician currently who has at least some kind of relation, talking relation to many leaders, being divided into different blocks. And Hungary will try to use this kind of connectivity or these connections to facilitate this kind of any kind of peace talks. So from this respect, Hungary is open for that. The big question is what the Trump government can really do in this issue. As it was already told during the campaign, and also the Hungarian government echoed that Donald Trump will bring the peace the first day of his presidency. As we can see, it's not still it isn't achieved, but probably Hungary will try to mend fences and support some kind of agreement between the different sides. But the main issue is that what the Trump administration will do in order to push Russia in order to conclude a peace or at least a ceasefire agreement with Ukraine.
Thank you, Zoltan Hocam. You actually draw a very clear framework what we should expect between the Hungarian-American relations. And I think the big question, and I think the new controversy will be about how the Hungarian government will balance their relations with China and the United States. It will be interesting days to watch it. I will give the floor right now to the Aslam. Brother, you already, we have been discussing a general framework for the reflection on the Europe and the global scale, but Trump, we know that he's mostly want to focus at the Asia. And I think India is one of the biggest partner of the United States when it comes to the security and the trade, what we should expect in the second Trump area. And I think it's also good to hear your comments regarding how the India will play a more effective role when it comes to the competition between the United States and the China in the trade and the security level.
Thank you very much. First of all, I am highly thankful to the Diplomacy Foundation for providing me the opportunity. Since we are mentioning here regarding the Trump's second presidency and his approach toward India. And in my opinion, Trump's approach toward India would likely evolve based on his previous engagement with India. But several key elements of his policy would remain consistent, as India is an important player in the Indo-Pacific strategy as far as the defense and the competition with China is concerned, and a key to the US strategy in countering China. So India would continue to be central to the Trump's foreign policy in the region, and a Trump 2.0 presidency would also bring its own challenges and shift in the bilateral relationship with India. When we are talking of strengthening ties, strategic ties in countering China, then Indo-Pacific strategy becomes more important as a key element. So India would continue to be a cornerstone of Trump's Indo-Pacific strategy. The second presidency would likely double down on efforts to strengthen the military and security ties with India, and the Quad, where US, India, Japan, and Australia are partnering, would become even more central to the US effort to contain China's growing influence in the region. Now, Trump would also push for the deeper military cooperation with India, including more joint military exercises, kind of defense sales, and the transfer of advanced technology. So India's growing role in the region would make it a key partner in the security framework aimed at countering Chinese influence, particularly in the area of cybersecurity, maritime, and counterterrorism, of course. So there could be an increased US support for India's instant in the South China Sea also, and Indo-Pacific maritime disputes where China's assertiveness has raised many questions and tensions. When we talk of the regional security, Trump would likely continue to support India's position in regional conflict, especially in relation to Pakistan and its border dispute with China. So the US might prioritize defense and strategic cooperation to bolster India's capacity to stand up to both regional rivals. So Trump could potentially provide more intelligence sharing, weapon delivery system, and training to the India's armed forces. When we talk of trade and economic perspective, then the trade tensions that while US-India relationship would remain strategically strong on the one hand, the trade issues would continue to present some key challenges. That Trump's protectionist trade policies would likely persist in his second term. So there could be continued pressure on India to open a more of its market to US products and reduce trade barriers. And with this regard, Trump also mentioned regarding that in his statements highly critical to the India's instance in terms of that. When we talk of investment and economic cooperation, on the positive side, Trump could continue to push for increased investment in India, particularly in the area of technology, energy, and other infrastructure sectors. So India's large consumer market, along with its burgeoning middle class, could present lucrative opportunities for US companies, and for that matter, Trump might encourage more US business to expand in India, particularly in industries like automobiles, defense, and energy. So India is as a manufacturing hub. That given the ongoing US-China trade tensions, Trump might also see India as a key partner in supplying chain diversification. Then India could benefit from American companies relocating production to India as part of the efforts to reduce dependence on China for manufacturing. Then defense and military cooperation that I talked earlier, that the increased defense deals, like Trump's first term saw a significant boost in defense cooperation with India and US, with arms sales and joint military exercises. A second term also would likely to continue this trend, and with the US potentially providing India with more advanced military technologies such as fighter jets, drones, and missile defense system. And when we are mentioning the India's role in Quad, the Quad would likely see more concrete steps, including the joint naval exercises and other multilateral defense initiatives. And India could also serve as a hub for US military presence in the region, reinforcing the strategic alliance in the Indo-Pacific. When there is a question of access to sensitive technologies, Trump might pursue agreements that allow India access to more sensitive military technologies, including the air defense systems, advanced aircraft system, and intelligence sharing arrangements. So this would further strengthen India's position as a key US ally in the Asia. So the two important things that I mentioned with reference to India's role, but some critical aspects are also here. That the first one I would mention here, that the trade relations that I already mentioned, that Trump's first term likely that pressurize more to India in terms of that. And in the 2024 presidential campaign, Trump frequently labeled India as a major abuser of tariffs. So it was a very heavy statement in terms of relationship with both the countries. And he also threatened the punitive measures for that matter. And the recent announcement with the increased tariff on the BRICS countries is a reflection of that particular things. So in his conversation with when Indian Foreign Minister Shri S. Jaishankar visited US, the counterpart Rubio also highlighted the same concern. Although the trade is not within his purview, but Foreign Minister indicated that the New Delhi is prepared for a forward-looking approach to enhance bilateral trade and economic ties. So some media reports from India says Indian officials are exploring ways to reduce the trade deficit with the US. And the goods trade surplus in India is favored during the 2022 was about 39 or 40 billion US dollar. So this kind of the developments, and another very important issue that I must mention here, that this kind of, that immigration issue that was earlier mentioned by the first speaker, that the major critical issue between India and US will be immigration, as Trump termed it a top priority. So media reports in India also indicates that around 18,000 illegal migrants from India are awaiting deportation, and positively India is also ready to accept those immigrants. So the recent visit to Indian foreign minister has settled the issue with the US counterpart also. But these are the major, that critical areas that these two challenges that India might face. But India is certainly in a kind of win-win situation when there is a trade war between US and China, when there is a question of security in the Indo-Pacific. So India is having leverage over that, and India will be a key partner for the United States in the South Asian region and counterbalancing China. Thank you.
Thank you, Aslam. You definitely touched upon the important points, especially when I asked the question, I was thinking the Indian illegal immigration and how it's reflect. And thank you for also covering this topic as well. So while we are finishing the first round, I will start with the second round, but not with the Philip this time, because I would like to take the Philip's last word as a last speaker. As an American. This time I will give the first floor in the second round to Valeria. Valeria, in the second round, can you just tell your future expectations, at least with just 2 or 3 sentences?
Well, I think in predictability, it will be, having no expectation, between what Trump says and then what really happens. There is sometimes a gap, and we know the character already because we have experience from his first mandate that he can wake up one day and it's enough to make a decision. So we have to be ready for everything, but I think with consciousness that time is changing and the world has been changing as well. So I think we have to be ready for the unexpected.
Thank you, Valeria. Aslam, can you hear me? Okay, can you just wrap up your last ideas related with the topic that we discussed?
Okay, when we are discussing this Trump's second presidency, it would likely see the continued focus on the great power competition, with South Asia playing a central role in the US-China rivalry. And India would continue to be a strategic partner, especially in defense and security, but trade frictions that could persist. And Pakistan, of course, would be a challenging relationship, with the US likely maintaining pressure for counterterrorism cooperation while avoiding the deep engagement in India-Pakistan conflicts. And when we are taking South Asia region as a whole, then Afghanistan would see further US troop withdrawals, like the further US engagement with the regional players like Pakistan and India, that would see further kind of, regional influence of USA to counter Chinese influence, because China's growing influence in South Asia in the form of sting of pulse and other measures that having a deep influence in South Asia, and US will try to counter those particular, influence of Chinese politics and strategies. And Trump engaged with South Asia, it will focus on economically, militarily, and security. And of course, whatever that Trump said that America first priorities, he would give the America first priorities with dealing with all these kind of the problems like economic problems, security, and strategic problems that they are having a challenge from China in South Asia and other part of the region. So India would be a key player for USA in this regard, since South Asia is seeing a kind of transformation, like Bangladesh is under a kind of domestic turmoil, in Afghanistan, in Pakistan. So these are several challenges that how to deal with those kind of the persisting problems. So India will be a key player in this regard, and definitely Indo-US partnership will further strengthen and will deal with all these key security and defense and strategic issues.
Thank you. It's obvious that the India will be the key when it comes to the Chinese rivalry over there. Zoltan?
Yes, concerning the Hungary and American relations, and generally, I also waiting for volatility in the upcoming future. I think it will be one of the key notion. On the other hand, the domestic political level, Viktor Orbán government will benefit a lot from this turn in the United States. And I think that in a given way, at least symbolically, the new administration in the United States will support internal politically Viktor Orbán for the upcoming future, which will be crucial in the elections, general elections next year. So I mean, the fact that right now there are new challengers from concerning the Fidesz or the government party's position, so the internal politics will be also interesting in Hungary.
Thank you. Before giving the last floor to the Philip, I know that it's a long story what the Turkey will expect. I don't want to get into details, but only I can say Turkey has a different and various expectation and the issues, I would say, with the United States. But most of the right now expectations, Trump area will be a different and mostly leader-to-leader diplomacy will be in the case like in the Italy and Hungary. But in the other way, we have lots of issues like under the NATO, Syria, Palestine, and other regional issues together with the Russian-Ukrainian war. So in this respect, I give the last floor to Philip, what we should be expect.
Thank you, Professor. The very interesting comments from our colleagues. Thank you for the chance to participate. I would stress, maybe in my last word, a point that I said in the beginning. The Trump administration is about transaction, and precedent where it was unfavorably, or at least based on Trump's values, unfavorably arranged from the American point of view will be questioned. And it will not be an assumption that what the United States did in the past will automatically be what it will do internationally in the future. Key values here are, for Trump, access to the American market. This is tariffs. The American point of view is that access to the U.S. market, domestic market, is a huge tool in the international relationship that the past American presidents have never used. When Trump talks about tariffs, if you peel back American history, you will find that the Republican Party, prior to Reagan particularly, but historically had always been the party of a tariff for the United States. Idea that access to the American market is a huge factor explains the discussion about the BRIC countries. It explains why he's transactional with any number of countries in the bilateral relationship. The other value we talked about briefly, access again to the United States, immigration. Trump believes firmly in border control and an orderly immigration process. And as I said, there's a reaction to that that's very strong across the American public. That's another value. Access to the country, again, is the idea in terms of immigration. So if you keep these factors in mind, while the president may sometimes seem unpredictable, they always circle back to these values: transactions with partners, access to the United States market, access to the country. So I'll stop with that. It was a pleasure to talk.
Thank you, Philip. It's always that we will discuss more when the Trump's started to make a new both domestic and the foreign policy action. And it's obvious that we will have for next year with a full of excitement and a full of new controversial across the world, not only in our region. Once more, while I am closing the panel, I just want to thank you to personally Philip, Valeria, Zoltan, and Aslam. Hope to see you in the different panel, both in online, and hope to see you, host you in Turkey, inshallah, face to face. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.